Stories are coming up, but first, let's meet the darkness behind the hearts and flowers. For most, today is a dream come true. Chocolates, roses, romance. But for others, that dream turns into a living nightmare. Let me tell you about the Valentine's Day that changed everything. My birthday happens to fall on Valentine's Day. Most people hear that and say, "Oh, that must be so romantic. You're so lucky." I used to think so too. But after what happened last year, I don't think I was lucky at all. It all started about 3 months before my birthday. My neighborhood had always been the boring kind of quiet. Suburban older couples. That changed in November. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My curiosity grew into a fixation. From my window, I'd watch him. He was a phantom emerging only at night to accept strange, heavy deliveries. I never saw his face clearly, just a silhouette against the dim porch light. The boxes he carried, they weren't normal. One night I saw him struggling with something long, wrapped in a thick blanket. My blood ran cold. I had to know what was happening in that house. Mrs. Gable, the sweet elderly woman who lived right next door, just vanished. One day she was watering her petunias, and the next day she was gone. It was a massive scandal in our town. Police were crawling all over the street for weeks, but they found absolutely nothing. No signs of struggle, no leads, nothing. Eventually, the yellow tape came down and the police stopped knocking on our doors. They called it a cold case. That's when he showed up. About a month after the investigation stalled, a man moved into Mrs. Gable's house. He introduced himself as a distant nephew. He told the few neighbors who asked that he was there to keep the place clean and safe until the family decided whether to sell the property. At first, he seemed normal. Maybe late 40s, balding, always wearing generic polo shirts. He kept the lawn mowed. He waved when he got the mail. He was the definition of a good neighbor. But that friendly facade didn't last long. My husband Dave works in a city hours away. During the week, he stays in an apartment there and comes home on weekends. That meant for 5 days a week, I was alone in the house. I started noticing the changes about a month in. It wasn't anything illegal, just unsettling. If I were in the kitchen washing dishes, I'd get that feeling of being watched. I'd look up and there he would be, standing on his back porch. He wouldn't be doing anything, not looking at his phone, not smoking, just standing there angled directly toward my window. The second our eyes met, he'd casually turn away like he was just inspecting the siding of the house. There were 2 specific incidents during those 3 months that I should have paid more attention to. The first happened in December. I came home from a grocery run, arms full of bags, and went around to the back door. I froze. The back gate was wide open. I am obsessive about locking that gate because of the stray dogs in the area. I dropped the groceries and walked the perimeter of the yard. Right beneath my kitchen window, pressed into the dirt, were 2 cigarette butts. They were fresh. The paper hadn't even started to unravel yet. I don't smoke. Dave doesn't smoke. I stared at them for a long time. It felt like a violation, like someone had been standing there just minutes before I pulled in. The second thing happened in mid-January. It was 2 in the morning. I was asleep until the sound of metal clicking woke me up. It was distinct, the sound of the front door handle being depressed and released. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. I waited, silence. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the entryway. I looked through the peephole, expecting to see a face, but the porch was empty. The motion sensor light wasn't even on. I told myself it was the wind or the house settling or just my paranoia over living alone next to a murder house. My mind was sure that it was the neighbor, but I didn't have a shred of proof. And honestly, I didn't want to tell Dave. He was stressed enough with his job, and I knew if I told him I was scared, he'd drive hours in the middle of the night for no reason. So I kept my mouth shut. Then came Valentine's Day. I woke up expecting a text from Dave or maybe a card in the mail. When I opened the front door to grab the morning paper, I looked down. There was a gift on the welcome mat. It was wrapped in shiny red paper with a gold bow. No card, no tag. I smiled. Dave, I thought. He must have ordered a same-day delivery or dropped it off late last night to surprise me. I took it inside to the kitchen island and tore the paper off. It was a box, heavy for its size. Inside was weird. It looked like a modern art decoration. It was a black block, almost like a paperweight with a weird geometric design and a small glass circle embedded in the front. It was honestly ugly, but Dave has terrible taste in home decor. I figured it was some high-end art piece he thought looked fancy. Thanks, honey, I whispered to the empty room. I carried the object upstairs and placed it on my dresser facing the bed. It seemed like the best spot for it. I went to work. had a normal birthday, and came home. Dave called that night to wish me a happy birthday, but he didn't mention the gift. I figured he was waiting for me to bring it up, so I decided to play it cool and thank him when he came home that weekend. The next morning is when my life fell apart. I opened the front door to leave for work, and there was another package. This one wasn't a box, it was an envelope. Dave usually wouldn't send an envelope. I picked it up, it felt light. I ripped the tab open. Right there on the porch, inside was a single photograph. My heart skipped a beat. It was a photo of me. I was asleep in my bed. The lighting was grainy, greenish like night vision. The angle was from the foot of the bed. I wasn't looking at a photo taken through a window. This photo was taken from inside my bedroom. I dropped the envelope and scrambled backward into the house, slamming the deadbolt home. I dialed Dave. "I didn't send you a box," he said, his voice dropping an octave when I described the black object. "I didn't send you anything yet. It's in the trunk of my car."
I looked up the stairs toward the bedroom. That black block. The glass circle. "Get out of the house," Dave said. "No, wait, don't go outside. If he's watching, just lock everything. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in a few hours." I didn't go back upstairs. I grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen and sat on the living room floor, away from the windows. I sat there for hours. The sun went down and the house turned dark. I didn't turn on a single light. I didn't want him to know where I was. Around midnight, I heard it. Footsteps on the gravel driveway. I gripped the knife handle with sweaty palms. The footsteps moved to the wooden slats of the front porch. They were heavy, deliberate. I waited for the doorbell. I waited for the crash of a kick, but there was nothing, just silence. Then, from the living room window right behind me, a playful, rhythmic tapping like someone trying to get a cat's attention. I don't know what possessed me. Adrenaline, sheer panic. I needed to know where he was so I could run the other way. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly, and crept toward the curtains. I reached out and yanked the fabric back. I screamed. I didn't mean to. It just ripped out of my throat. A figure was standing there. He was wearing a realistic white plastic ghost mask. The eyes were just black holes. He wasn't moving, he was just staring. My brain stopped, the room spun, and I passed out. The next thing I knew, the doorbell was ringing frantically. "Honey, it's me," to open the door. "Dave." I crawled to the door and let him in. I was sobbing so hard I couldn't speak. I dragged him to the window, but the yard was empty. I told him about the ghost mask. I pointed toward the neighbor's house. "It's him," I choked out. "I know it's him." Dave didn't waste time. He has a buddy on the local police force and he called him directly on his cell. Because of the missing person history next door, the cops arrived fast. Dave marched the police upstairs to the black box. One of the officers, a younger guy, put on gloves. He turned it over and frowned. "It's a nanny cam," he said flatly. "You can buy these on Amazon for $20. Uses an SD card." The cops went next door because that's where the footprints in the snow led before they vanished onto the pavement. I waited by the window, chewing my thumbnail. I watched them knocked out. I saw the neighbor answer. He looked confused, scratching his stomach, wearing an old robe. They spoke for a minute. Then the officers walked inside. They were in there for 10 minutes. When they came back to our house, they didn't have him in handcuffs. They just looked annoyed. "It's not him," the older officer said, closing his notebook like he was done with the conversation. "You're joking," I snapped. "He's got a broken leg, ma'am," the officer said. "The cast goes up to his hip. Happened days ago. He can barely get to the bathroom, let alone climb your porch steps or run away into the woods." I felt the blood drain from my face, but the footprints, Someone's been staying in his shed, the cop interrupted, thumbing over his shoulder. We found a sleeping bag and a bunch of cigarette butts out back. The neighbor said he thought he heard raccoons. Whoever it was, they're long gone. That was it. Dave put in new locks, but I still don't sleep right. The worst part isn't the guy in the mask. It's the neighbor, Data accused him. I screamed at the police that he was a pervert. Now, whenever I see him hobbling to get his mail on his crutches, he doesn't look angry. He just looks at me with this pitiful, sad expression. I think he knows I'm the one who sent the cops, and the person who is actually watching me. We never found him. The flowers will fade, but the fear stays. That is the dark side of Valentine's Day.